Good afternoon, everyone, especially to our instructor, Mrs. Mirasol D. Gawiran. So I am going to discuss the Prioress tale, one of the story, rather, of the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. So here's the summary. Once in an ancient town, there was a Jewish ghetto at the end of a street, in which usury and other things hateful to Christ occurred. The Christian minority in the town opened a school for their children in the city at the other end of the same street. Among the children attending the school was a widow's son, an angelic 7-year-old who was, even at his young age, deeply devoted to his faith. At school, he learned songs in Latin and could sing his Ave Maria and Alma Redemptoris, a song giving praise to the Virgin Mary and paid due reverence to Christ. As he was walking home from school one day singing his Alma Redemptoris, he provoked the anger of the Jews of the city, whose hearts were wasp nests made by Satan. So they hired a murderer who slit the boy's throat and threw the body into a cesspit. So the widow searched all night for her missing child, begging the Jews to tell her where her child might be found, but they refused to help her or give her any information. So Jesus, however, gave her the idea to sing in the place where her son had been cast into the pit. And as she called out to him, the child, although his throat was slit, began to sing his Alma Redemptoris. The other Christians of the city ran to the pit, amazed at what was happening, and sent for the provost. The provost praised Christ and his mother Mary, and had the Jews tied up. The child was taken up and carried in a great and honorable procession to the nearest abbey, his corpse singing all the while. So the local provost cursed the Jews and ordered their death by hanging. Before the child was buried, holy water was sprinkled onto him, and began to speak. The abbot of the abbey questioned him as to how he could sing, and the child answered that the Virgin Mary had placed a grain on his tongue that allowed him to speak. The abbot took this grain from his tongue, and allowing him to die, and finally pass on to heaven. The child was buried in a marble tomb as a martyr, and the tale ends with a lament for the young child, but also for Hugh of Lincoln, a real child martyr allegedly slain by Jews in Chaucer's day. So that's all for the summary of the Prioress tale. Next, we're going to discuss the analysis. So the Prioress tale is overtly a miracle of the Virgin, a reasonably common Christian genre of literature which represents a tale centered around Christian principles and a devotion to the Virgin Mary, but within the warm affection that the prioress shows for her Christian faith is a disquieting anti-Semitism, immediately obvious to the modern reader in our post-Holocaust times. So the tale is an unabashed celebration of motherhood and an apologetic argument for the virtue of Christianity over Judaism, and in most critics' readings, it partly serves as a grim reminder that anti-Semitism by no means began with Hitler, the Second World War. So the guiding figure of the tale is Virgin Mary, addressed directly in its prologue, who serves both as the exemplar for Christian values and as the intervening spirit who sustains the murdered child before he passes on to heaven. So her mortal parallel is the mother of the murdered boy, who dearly loves her son and struggles to find the boy when he is lost. The tale itself, as Seth Lerer has pointed out, is a nightmare of performance, which dramatizes just what happens when a performer faces a hostile audience. So the little clergyman of the tale, which is the child, is an unsuspecting victim, murdered solely because of his eagerness to sing. One of many tales which seems to take as its theme the danger of speaking, the potential danger of words and language, and a warning about what happens to people who open their mouths at the wrong moment. Other such tales include those of the Mansipol and the Nun's Priest. So, despite its interest in song and performance, the key question still seems to be whether we are to read the tale as an outdated example of anti Semitism, acceptable to a medieval audience but acceptable no longer, or whether there is another option. So, if there is, it probably lies in the sentimental presentation of the Prioress tale and the juxtaposition of the extremely angelic singing 7-year-old and the extremely cruel and horrible Jews. So who even go to the lengths of throwing the child's corpse into a cesspit. So if we remember that the prioress is a woman so sentimental that she even cries over a dead mouse, it's quite a contrast in her personality that she expends such vitriol over the Jews. Perhaps there is some sort of contrast. Perhaps the prioress is intended to be held at arm's length from Chaucer,